You're watching The Whole Living Show on Trajectory TV.
Without truth, freedom doesn't exist. My soul has always been based on the principles of freedom, which is getting to the core or truth of an issue. Choosing the name Radical Press embodies me. When you look at the etymology of the word radical, it's about getting to the root of shit, derived from the Latin word radix, which literally means root. Press is the medium in which we use. Press can be in print, video, voice, or any type of media that gets information to the people. Radical Press magazine is about bringing truthful information and real knowledge to the people through a different lens.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Whole Living Show. It is Happy, Healthy 2024, and we are in our third season on the Whole Living Show. Super excited to be here, and I'm even more excited about the guest that we have. So if you missed her last night on Fem Talk, guess what? She is here on the Whole Living Show tonight. So make sure that you stay tuned in. But before we bring in our beautiful guest, let me tell you, everyone, I have been cleansing for the past 10 days. Today is day 10. I'm doing a 14-day herbal cleanse. And when I tell you that I am releasing so many things, and you can see I'm doing the natural hair right now, the braids are gone, the nails are off, everything. I am cleansing right now. I am like supernatural right now and just releasing a lot. And when I tell you that cleansing is not just about the physical body and releasing toxins from your physical body, when you start to clear out your gut and you pay attention to your gut health, you're going to start to get some emotional awareness, spiritual awareness. It starts to cleanse your entire being. So that's what I am doing right now. And I have to give a shout out to Dr. Bobby Price because I'm doing his cleanse. And this herbal cleanse, well, I have to tell you, I have to be honest and really transparent about this. When I tried it, I didn't like it. And I'm used to cleansing, but the parasite cleanse, the taste is not so inviting. I have to be honest. However, it started working right away for me. And I have been releasing so much, and I'm so happy that I'm doing it because I feel better, I feel lighter. And I started to feel after the holidays, and yes, even me, the health coach, I started to feel after the holidays and after working the way that I was prior to the holidays, that, my body was a little more inflamed than normal. And though I was still eating well, I wasn't getting as much movement as I would normally. So I'm being real transparent about this. So this is another reason why I like to go into the new year cleansing and releasing and getting all that toxicity out and examining myself and my own behavior and my own activity. And this is so key because I'm doing this right now and we have the amazing Declutter coach here. So we're going to get into more of why all these things are so important to your mind, body, your spirit, and your physical space. It is so key. So I wanted to just mention the cleansing. I suggest that everybody do a cleanse, and I think you should at least do a cleanse twice a year. I have been doing them every quarter, and this was a new one that I was trying because I wanted to try the herbal detox, and it is very different, but I am releasing a lot without being too graphic about it. It is really, everything is really coming out. So I'm so grateful for it because I feel so much lighter. There's no bloating. Like I said, no inflammation, which was the biggest thing for me to get rid of inflammation that was trying to consume my body, and I'm not having it. So we're going to get into this conversation with my guest who is backstage about how to declutter your life. Her name is Monica Jenkins, and she is a speaker, a best-selling author. Her book is named The Cost of Clutter. She's a billion-dollar wisdom for culture, communities, and that's the title. Everybody forgive me. The Cost of Clutter, billion-dollar wisdom for culture, communities, and companies. She helps executive leaders and professionals have more peace of mind, clarity, and direction at work and at home. Monica has trained leadership teams in global corporations, faith-based organizations, and diverse communities. Drawing on her own personal experiences with racism, being let go from her job, and as an overwhelmed mother and wife, Monica offers a step-by-step guide that we are going to get into this evening to personal and professional transformation that begins with the cleaning out of your closet. And I want you to hear what she has to say about closet because it may not be exactly what you think it is all the time. So we're going to bring her in. I want you to give a virtual round of applause to Monica Jenkins. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
We sister.
I have to tell you, I was listening to your opening, and I'm like that's exactly why we need to do some decluttering for the same reasons that you're doing this cleanse.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was like, yeah, that's so just as you may recommend to do that twice a year, I recommend if people want to get started with some decluttering, twice a year is a good way to start. The beginning of the year and in the I would say summer or so. But I love that. It very much aligns with kind of what I do because as you stated in the intro, when I work with folks, it's so that they will have peace, so that they will have clarity and they can be able to get direction. It affects their emotions. It affects a lot of things. You communicate better when things are a little more in order. So yeah, thank you for, starting it off with that because that is so much similar to what we're doing here.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about the clarity and the direction, right, for people and being able to clear out your space. That's what we were talking backstage, and we were talking about the synergies between being able to, kind of release the toxins from your body and decluttering your mind and your space. It's all connected. It all goes together. And that's what Monica and I were talking about backstage. So let's get into this. Let's get into how you help people begin to declutter, because I know you mentioned some very key things about how to start. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you. Yeah. So I work with folks one-on-one. I work with folks in workshops, so on a virtual call. I also have been invited in to speak. I work with library programs, wellness programs, different types of programs, corporation teams, different teams. And in each way that I do it, it is different. Now, I have a 6-step method that I use, and it's called Clutter to Clarity Coaching. And it starts with vision. So vision, we talked about vision yesterday and about what that could look like. And I say have a vision for everything when you're starting to declutter. If you're going to be cleaning out your purse or your pocketbook or your backpack, what's the vision for what has to be in there? The steps are aligned with the word vision. Each letter represents a step. So I'll run those through right now, if that's okay. So
Yeah.
we have V standing for value, I is standing for identify, S is standing for simplify, I is standing for, the other I is standing for inspire, the O stands for own, and the N stands for nurture. And
Mm.
so as we go through a project, a situation, or whatever it is, where I'm always going to use those as kind of a guiding principle. And one of the things that I talk a lot about, so yeah, my steps are what you need, but you also need a little courage to clean out your closet.
Mm.
And about that, it's because and this kind of takes us to our mental space, because this is the other type of work. This comes up in the work that I do, is that
Mhm.
we look at not only your physical space, but we look at what's going on in the mind, the mental space, and how
Mhm.
those two align. And what goes on in here might reflect what's going on in that closet, or in that drawer, in the car,
Yeah.
or in that relationship, or it spans, excuse me, in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
so I talk about the courage to clean out your closet. And I want to spend a moment on that, because
Mhm.
what does that mean? The courage to clean out your closet.
Mhm.
When I was writing the book, and this is in the book, I reflected on a time when my little godniece did an interview on courage. And she's homeschooled. And so she came down to Connecticut, and she had a list of questions. And I remember when she asked me those questions, she sent me a kind of like some pre things, but no one ever really asked me about courage.
Mhm.
And so part of my story was, I shared like yesterday, I said, yeah, I got fired from a job, and it took me down this path to write this book, come up with these steps, and create this business.
Mhm.
But there was one thing I know that I didn't have, was courage, as I began to kind of walk this space. I had a little faith,
Mhm.
right? But the courage part is a little different, because well, if it's okay, I'm going to read this right out of the book. All right.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
here's the thing. So these are the questions that my godniece asked me in preparation for my interview with her.
Mhm.
And so here's in the book. So this is number one. When was the most fun time you had to use courage?
Mhm.
And I say, this is what I say in the book: to consider when you challenged yourself to try something new, and think about how you felt after. Maybe it's
Mhm.
this lens you're talking about.
Mhm.
Maybe it's, getting into those spaces in your house, right? Another one: who is a person you admire for being courageous? Consider the person or story that made you want to be better, and as a
Mhm.
result, you made some small changes in your own life.
Yeah.
Well, I know, meeting Coach Tracy, I know I want to do better physically. Definitely. She knows a little bit about that. Um, and then the other one is, name a time that you did not use courage and should have. Consider a time when you said yes and you should have maybe said no.
Mm.
And this
Oh,
is the
so
last
I
point.
have to stop you sometimes, because sometimes there's just like some key points that I really gotta like hone in on. So I love the last part where you're saying, even consider the times where you exercise courage where you shouldn't have. Please go into that a little bit more, because I know people are probably out there wondering, like, why is that significant?
I think it's very significant, because um, we say yes to a lot of things,
Mhm.
because it could be that we're people pleasers, and that's a clutter thing. Why are we people pleasing?
Yeah.
Okay, we say a yes to a lot of things when we're in certain environments,
Yeah.
because we want to be seen and be heard, maybe,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that as I wrote that out, as she asked that question, as I wrote the book, I thought about those times, because when we think of our mental space, we have to think about those things that have come with us through our lifetime up to this point, right? So you're 30, 40, 50, 60, you bring in a lot of things forward with you.
Yeah.
And our lived experiences, although some of them may good, some of them not so good, also influence how we kind of walk through space. And some of that needs to be unpacked, because it might not serve you in today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's that. So that's the
That's
clutter.
great.
Let's sweep some of that out, that old thinking or those. And so sometimes we just say yes. We get excited because we're invited,
Mhm.
right? Or we get excited because a certain someone or a certain somebody's going to be there. And so you're excited. And so, but you haven't really taken the stock to think about, like, as we talked about vision, like, is this really aligning up with my vision?
Yeah.
You know, so that's really where that came from.
I love it. I love it. Okay, continue. I had to point that out.
No, I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And so the other point is, was there a time when having a colleague helped you been more, wait, excuse me, let me say this again. Was there a time when having a colleague helped you to be more courageous?
Mm.
So was there a time when having a colleague helped you? So that's the part. And that made you be more courageous. Consider the time when you were overwhelmed by a project and you really needed help. Did you ask for help? Or if not, why? So I said that from a personal experience, being in a really new job, amazing job, very big job. And I always had in my mind, and also this is tied to, you know, me being a Black woman working in a space where there's not a lot of us, and we tend to feel like we have to we got to do. And so if you need help, sometimes you're like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm asking for help. You know, am I alone in that? Like I, you know, found myself like doing that until when I realized the team that I was on, when we were checking in, they, you know, it was very evident that someone said, you know, make sure you check in if you're got this, that, this. If you don't have the bandwidth, you know, check out with your person on your peer or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. So I tried it out. And it was one of these things where it's like, oh yeah, let us, girl, we can, yeah, give me this. And I learned so much from that. You know, if I wasn't courageous enough to just, okay, call. But I was stuck in that mindset of who I was as a person of color, where I've been in spaces where I feel like I've had to prove myself, you know? And so I felt very courageous in that moment where I was like rallying colleagues around me to kind of get this thing done because it was very, you know, time sensitive.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think when we talk about working with professionals, because I work for, you know, professional, this is for your professional life and your personal life. And this is, yes, we talk about leaders and executives, but this is for anyone who needs some decluttering in their life. I don't want to, this is an inclusive type of thing. We also, when we get home, I'm Monica. When you maybe go to work, you may be the CEO of whatever you're the CEO of, or you're the director of this or you're that. But when you get home, your dad and mom, you know, we wear these different roles. And it's so important that where we sit. So when I'm at home, that I'm looking around and seeing how my environment is being impacted by the things that I have or the things that I don't have.
Yeah.
But also that courage to clean out of the closet. So we can go to that from all the things that, and I use this word metaphorically and physically. And so the courage to clean out your closet means you're looking at your stuff, all your stuff.
And I would even say too, like even from the lens of, because you just mentioned something so key as well, you have all these different hats and all these different roles that you play. But when you're looking at everything, look at it from each lens, right?
Yeah.
Because your life still always comes together, even though you're separate at your job, then you come home and you're at home. But all of those things can start to mesh together. So you have to look at it from the lens of who am I as a whole person? You know, shameless plug here is the Whole Living Show, right? But who am I as a whole person, right? In order to really be able to declutter in a manner that's going to really give you the peace in all facets of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, and so what I will say about closets when I work with people with closets, it's very emotional. It's an emotional thing. And yes, it's about letting go, but also when you're, you know, deciding what pieces that you might want to discard or give away or donate or what have you, there is a tie to it, you know, and it's not, and I understand why it's difficult because, well, we do a lot of things like, oh, I'm going to wear this when I'm like lose 30 pounds thing. And I'm always like, dress the body you have, you know, because I was doing that too. So it's like, just dress the body you have, you know, and also too, and having a vision for yourself, how you want to show up. Because I talk about vision a lot, and vision is basically what we want for ourselves, what we actualize for ourselves, our goals and our plans for our life, where we want to see ourselves go. Right. And so when you look at your closet, if it's not reflecting that, whether it's in a shoe or a jacket or something that you see that you're holding on to things from like 5 years ago that you haven't worn, so sometimes it's before you even having the courage to go into the closet is we have to have the courage to sit with ourselves and say, what's going on in my life? And so the second step in my step is identify. So that's really important part to the process. Sometimes when I work with folks one-on-one, we don't even get to the stuff. We just talk. We talk about the stuff. Okay. But when we do workshops, so I've done 3 8-week workshops that I created, and we're going through the stuff. We're going through the places. We're going through like the closet's always a big one. The car has come up a lot. So the cars, when I was doing my interviews and having conversations for the book, a lot of car conversations were coming up. And people feel like, I know my car may look a certain way, but I also feel like if I don't deal with it, it's a reflection of who I am, and so no shame or no blame in that, but those are true feelings that you have. So, you're acknowledging those. And if you feel like if you could, have your car look a certain way, it'll make you feel a certain way. And and studies show that. Studies show that when we clean up certain areas of our life, it affects our mood. It definitely affects our mood. It gives us, a sense of peace. So, yeah. So one-on-one workshops. And then something that we've kicked off is couples and clutter specifically for people who are married, who want to be married or are partnered. And I've had a lot of people, approach me about that, like his stuff, his stuff, her stuff. And it's like, we all have different organizational styles is what I like to say. And some of us, there's always that person will say they have, I have actually on I think it's on my wall over there. Somebody gave to me. It says a decluttered mess or a cluttered desk is a sign of genius. And I put declutter. E there. But also, no shame or blame. I think that if you know where your things are, I'm not going to tell somebody. If I'm not going to, you have to tell me what's impacting you, right? So if that's not impacting you, do your thing, whatever, it's fine, whatever. But so we do have something that we've kicked off called Couples and Clutter, and we're going to be doing a lot more with that probably in the summer, and probably Valentine's Day kicking off something as well.
I have two questions for you. So do you do couples who are intending, right? And maybe they, are trying to figure out how they come together, because once you start living together, it becomes a whole different ballgame, right? Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, do you help those couples who are now coming together and need to figure out where they need to be before they get cluttered, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually recommend it if you're considering, because a lot of folks who are moving in together before marriage, it's a thing. It's not, and a lot of times when you say, oh, why don't you, why? I'm just curious, y'all getting married? Yeah, we want to get to know each other first, because that's what I've heard, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, that's a really good a good way to get to know someone, but also to the question, like, this is a good way to learn about who you are and together when you start thinking about spaces. So yeah, I definitely welcome, people who are, wanting to be coupled, uncoupled, certainly. Yeah, definitely.
And then I have another question for you too.
Sure, go
ahead. Because I was thinking about the person who, as you were talking about the closet and whatever space that is, but the person who is really having a hard time releasing things for whatever reason, like what steps do you go through with them in order for them to be able to really clean things out? Because you know how a lot of people are like, okay, like I'm using the water bottle as an example, right? But you pull it out and then you put it back, and then you take something else out and you put it back. Like, what do you do with those people who are really having trouble clearing things out?
Sure, like everybody has a different story. So we start with the story. And then I kind of look at like, first of all, they're going to say what it means. So I have a water bottle too. So I'm just going to give an example. Oh, this was given to me by my great-great-grandmother. I don't know if I can get rid of it. And I've got like 12 of these. Okay. All right. And so oftentimes, okay, do you have the space for it? No, because that's why it's in the basement. Okay. How are you honoring that if you want to keep it, if it's in your basement next to the tires and the oil where your husband's changing the oil and the, yeah, how are you doing that? So we kind of just take people through the why. And a lot of people who hold on to things because of generational ties is because I think the generations felt that that was something they were supposed to do, is pass on something for them.
Yeah.
And so we talk about like, well, would you want to pass? I said, would your children be interested in this? Or is there somebody else in the family that maybe you guys can honor this together? Maybe you can split the setup. Like, if you got 12 and maybe, some of you take, divide it by your siblings or your kids, maybe if there's some interest in that. And so I say your space needs to function for you. And so if you really want this in your space, then we look at, well, what is something that else that would maybe not matter? Because I don't want to tell people to get rid of stuff they're not ready to get rid of, but I do want to offer them an opportunity to see ways in which that they can hold on to it, but also let go of it at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And so then it goes to, so what kind of in that end part of the conversation is, it's okay to let people know that I don't have, I thank you, but I can't receive that right now due to whatever reason. And that's a hard thing with when you're talking to elders. But I did have an elder ask me, how can we teach the next generation, meaning her daughter, her son, how to not have stuff? And I said, well, that's, one of the ways is that they know that they don't have to pass it on if they don't want to, or they give it away while they're still living. Because I've heard stories, people have passed away and went to go to Auntie's house and she had all this stuff and they were overwhelmed by all of her things.
Yeah.
And so I have, it's a one-on-one kind of a thing. We just go through the process of the steps. One, is this valuable to you? Well, it was, great auntie. So that's the value. That's the person. She gave it to me. And how long has it been in the basement since she gave it to me? And then and so I kind of go, do you feel like you're honoring her by keeping it down there?
Yeah.
And so I think, and so they sit with that. Nope. And then it's gone. Some people will keep it and try to get rid of other things. So that's one way. It's about honor, and it's about functionality in your space. And it's also about, are there other people that you could possibly donate or give to, or yeah, there's a lot of different ways that has gone. Photographs has been a big one. Tons of photographs. I know somebody who wanted to get rid of photographs. I remember my husband and I were going through that challenge, tons of photographs, and he believes it's a part of history. It's our family history. So he likes to keep them. But someone else, I had spoken to a woman who's a curator at a museum. And I said, let me ask about all these pictures. Can we possibly donate some pictures? And this is from an elder that passed on. Can we possibly, she goes, this was during COVID. She says, I would, if and this is why I wish we write on our pictures, time, date, stamp them. They used to do that back in the day. They don't do it now. But if you know the date, if you know where they are. So if you know that this picture was taken in New Jersey or Connecticut or Detroit, go to the local museum and say these pictures are taken here, and they may have some interest in them. So there's a lot of different things, or you can scan them, for photographs. The photographs is a big one, and generational items are a big one. Yeah, and clothing.
And how dangerous is the basement, right? You made me think about, I think the basement should be extended living space instead of, just storage, right? Because when we get into and I'm saying this because I was there when I was in my house in New Jersey, and my basement was storage. So it's almost like everything went down there, right? Everything that I didn't want to look at the moment, everything that was old, it always went to the basement instead of out the door, right?
Right.
And I didn't really clear all of that out until I actually had a flood in my basement, and I didn't have a choice, right? That was the first time. And then when I moved, but I've learned my lesson since then, right? I've learned my lesson, and I don't allow things to get cluttered. But, talk about even that, where people, kind of hide things in plain sight, right? They take something like the basement or some closet that's off on the side, and they just throw things in there.
because it's that I don't see it clutter. It's
Yeah.
like we keep it because we have a place for it.
Yeah.
Basements are difficult for everybody.
Mhm.
We all struggle with basements.
Mhm.
And I have had a couple of clients who thought to use their basement for they're creating a business. They're going to utilize it for some of their items that were related to the business, and went down into the basement and almost cried because it was like, okay, you have this great idea and you're ready to get started. Oh yeah, I've got the space for a basement as you're talking to people about it. Well, you could do this in your home, and you say, oh yeah, and you go down there and you're like, oh my God, like this, and it totally stressed.
Yeah.
So the basement you have to take slow. But I think that's one of those things like the cleanse, you have to do that more than twice a year. You've got to look at it 3 times and maybe 4 times a year. I'm a seasonal person, so I try to speak to people from that space.
Yeah.
Yard sales are really hard to put together unless they just are. They're hard. And we've got Facebook Marketplace. We have all kinds of ways to sell things now. And if you have a vision for your basement to be more organized, this is how we do a vision for our basement. We map out over time, because I think what we do is we want to rush and have it done in the weekend. And that never happens. And believe me, because I know I tried. We fought all weekend. This is when the child was leaving and another one was coming and going. And my husband, the only thing that I utilize in a basement is my laundry. And that's what's in there. We have zones. So I talk to people about zones. If you have an overwhelming situation in the basement, zone it. So if you have, and with a lot of us who have children who are now empty nesters, we have things in our basements that belong to our kids. So I'll give this example because I'm one of those as well. But I had a couple, another client who had the same situation and said, I don't know, I told him to come and get it. I said, well, this is what you can do. Zone your basement. Because if it's not ready for the construction of, doing what you want to do, at least organize it so that when it's time, okay, that's my husband's tools. They're in that zone. That's my daughter's stuff. That's my son's stuff. That's my other daughter's stuff. You create zones for all those spaces.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily even have to go through stuff. You can kind of just say, whose is this? And you probably know whose it is, and just create those zones. And that's a way to start moving stuff out of the basement. It's a big undertaking. You need everybody. And I always say, if those things belong to your kids, bring them in. And if they don't have it, because typically when they move out, they're not moving into spaces where they have storage necessarily. Their first places are probably smaller, apartments or that kind of thing.
They have roommates, right? So
So you don't have that opportunity. So, and I know I did it too. I left stuff in the garage, and then there was a serious weather event and all my stuff the garage kind of got flooded. And so I lost all of that stuff. And so that in itself doesn't even tell us like, that's not the best place to store things. And especially things that we want to honor that belong to something somebody had given to us, whether it be generationally or whether it be a family member or whoever it may be. But that's what I recommend for basements, because it's that place that always is changing. And unless you decide that you want to make it a family room and you're going to remodel it, then that'll be fun, because then you're really limiting the storage, which I think is always wonderful, because that's a goal for me, for my basement.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Make it a living space so that
make it a living space. Yeah.
I remember when I was moving from New Jersey, and we're going to take a quick commercial break after this, and then I want to get further into this conversation. But I was moving, and when I put my house up for sale, the realtor told me, she's like, I have a person that can come in and clear everything out. So I decluttered my mind around the whole thing. Because at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. I don't know what I'm going to let him take out. Everything that I wasn't using, Monica, I was like, get it out of here. So it's like a running joke for me now, even in my family. Like anytime anybody in my life, and my bestie can attest to this, but anytime anybody in my life says they want to clear out stuff, I'm like, you can call Mr. Pete. He'll get it out of there for you. You don't even have to look at it. Just take all those piles that you're not using and let it go. And that's what I did. And I can tell you, I don't miss anything. I don't even feel it. You know what I mean? So it was a wonderful thing to just really like release it and let Mr. Pete take it all and let it go. But everybody out there, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Do not go anywhere, because we're going to continue to talk about how you declutter your spaces, not only in your life and in your household, but in your mind and in your body. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, and we are back. If you saw that commercial there, make sure that you check out Weekly Dose of Dano right here on Trajectory TV at e360tv.com. He is on Thursday nights. All right, and we are back with Monica Jenkins here, the declutter coach herself, and we're talking about the cost of clutter, which is also the name of her book. So I want to just here at this midway point, just to give people your website, where they can go to get the book. It is The Cost of Clutter, and I'm sorry, it's .com, and the book. And I'm going to fix that because we want to do you justice here. Everybody get this right. Want to make sure you get this right. So it's .com, thecostofclutter.com /the book. Make sure that you go and get the book. And listen, I know that you have something that you can clear out. So you definitely want to get this book, okay? Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, other forms of, the need, right, to declutter, because there's so many, and I know you touched on them before and we talk about them. So I want you to get into that for people, because I think some people are just thinking about, spaces, physical spaces, and that's not the only thing that we have to declutter.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah. So why I wrote the book is because I really wanted to show how mental clutter and physical clutter, how they align, right? Our mental spaces, what's going on in our mind can be a reflection of what's in our spaces, and vice versa. Right. And so, yesterday when we were talking, actually, when I went through my firing of my job, and all of the steps after that, like going to the labor department and just not knowing what my next was going to be, just wondering, like, why is this happening? Still saying why, and wasn't focused on the next. But I remember Dr. Melissa had said, like, how did you deal with that? How did you get, declutter that, all of those feelings you had essentially going into that space? And I said, I prayed a lot, and I did. But I also, I needed to be connected, not only to counseling, but I also needed therapy. I needed I wrote things down, because there is studies that show when we write things down, there is a release that happens here, and you're letting things go. But I also process things with the therapist and my mom. And some of the and that's not just for that event, but that's just as someone who has experienced depression before. And something when I did experience, and this is before this event happened, but I believe it came back, revisited in a small way. But when it did happen, and when it was mentioned to me by a doctor, I was like, what? Like, because we don't talk about it. Now we're talking about it, mental wellness, mental health. We're talking about all the things associated that can impact depression, or the different types of depression that there even are. Like now, it's like there's so many different levels of it, right? And so I remember I was like, she says, we can give you a mild pill for that. And I was like, no, thank you. She goes, do you exercise? I said, well, at the time I was relatively young and I felt like I was in good shape. And I was like, well, no, not really. Well, I recommend maybe going to the gym, working out. And I was like, I'll take that. Yeah. And what I realized is, she has said to me, and as you know, as a reset coach who works on helping us to become physically fit and also eat better,
Mhm.
that it does something to us. It does something to our brains. When we are moving, we are active.
Mhm.
And I said that is going to be how I let go of some of the stuff that I don't want to carry,
Yeah.
because that's what that fog is. That thing is, you're just carrying so much stuff, and if you're not talking it out with someone, or if you're not having counseling, if you're not like doing anything for yourself, and we talk about self-care now today, we weren't talking about that back then. We were going to the doctor and we were getting prescribed. If I'm going to be real, right? And so the self-care component is the exercise.
Mhm.
I still am mindful of that today because I know what those symptoms can look like. So when that firing happened,
Mhm.
I had to like, okay, okay. And another thing that I do is inhale, exhale, breathe. I talk about that. I
Yeah.
make sure that we have, I do that before I sit down for a meeting. I do that before I go visit someone who might challenge me a little bit. I do
Yes.
it often. And I
Yeah.
do it actually when I wake up in the morning, and I do
Mhm.
it right before I go to bed, because I want to inhale and exhale out the day.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important. So
Yeah.
that your mental space, if you're somebody who doesn't like to maybe journal, maybe you like to draw or you like to scribble or write. That's something new that's happening. I'm seeing the scribble pads and the adult coloring books and those different things. There's art
Mhm.
therapy even out there now. Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of things that we can do to kind of help us manage this mental stuff until we get to a place where we can like say, okay, I need to visualize what's my next is, and oftentimes, and not to discount like why we get to those spaces, there's a lot of things that are going on in our life. And
Yeah.
what we also know, the obstacles are going to come and they are going to go. But we want to make sure that we have a mechanism of on how to kind of stay the course,
Yeah.
right? It's not about being perfect and showing a mask and wearing a mask and showing up, oh, I'm good and I'm fine. But it's being able to kind of like say, okay, acknowledge, acknowledge what's happening for ourselves,
Mhm.
and seeing how we can find a way to be better, to get better. And
Yeah.
practices and habits and different things are all tied to some of the work too that I do. We talk about habits and we talk about some things that we can maybe stop and some things that we maybe need to start.
Yeah. It's so key. Just to be able to come to grips with things, right? And kind of feel through it and then let it go,
Yeah.
right? Because I think oftentimes we don't, and I love that you said engage the help, be it a therapist, a counselor, a coach, but to really be able to engage the assistance that you need to get through, right? There's no shame in that. And I'm so glad that now, in the time that we're in now, that there isn't any shame wrapped around that, and that people can really seek the help that they need without feeling like there's something wrong with doing so, right?
Right.
Because I know, particularly in our culture, right, we like it was unheard of to go to a therapist, right?
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a trust factor. And I
yeah,
also think to that point too, there weren't a lot of therapists that would look like us.
hmm
And I think that, that is a critical piece
hmm
because we have different traumas on top of already something else that we're going through.
yeah,
And I talk a little bit about in the book about when I talk about mental clutter, I talk about clutter and racism. I talk about clutter and courage, which we've kind of talked about that already, how courage can help us to kind of step out from,
yeah,
'cause when we hold back, sometimes it's because of clutter, but clutter and racism. I talk about that because of my lived experience as a Black girl, as a Black woman,
hmm
and how that impacted me in when I navigated a career, where I navigated school, college, my dance, the things that I love, like those, I shrunk back.
hmm
And so I think that it is very important that we acknowledge the fact that we do have probably more Black and Brown folks and Indigenous folks in that space of therapy for us,
hmm
because there is a connection with lived experiences and also shared experiences.
hmm
But, you know, thankfully, this work has not only brought awareness to those things, but
hmm
also some of the work that I do as an entrepreneur is I want to bring attention to that. And I partner with nonprofits in my area something new, not something new, but something that I started this year or last year, end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we touch upon things that are impacting the BIPOC communities. And so I'm either collaborating or volunteering. And my work is, also kind of a wellness, something that can stand in the wellness space.
Yeah.
We can talk about this in different spaces. So that's still very important to me, because those events, when we talk about, if you are someone who has been impacted by certain things, it's good to have a space so we can talk about those things. And so that's something I started back probably during when we were, say during COVID. I did a dance and dialogue, and that was tied to just the frustration and the anger around the police brutality that we were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And calling our girlfriends and our families and having conversations with our parents about all of this and reliving all the things that were happening. I talk about this in the book. It brings back stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't walk around angry. I said, let me bring together, invite some of my sisters in, and we did a dialogue, and we danced.
Mm-hmm.
We moved. We did some movement, but we talked about it. But we felt released. We were able to release all of that, upset, disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
fear, and so I want to continue to do that work. We actually have another project that's coming, two projects that are going to be coming up around issues of difference. And so I'm looking forward to that.
I love how you tied that in. And I always talk about habit stacking, right? And I love how you tied that in to be able to have something that you enjoy, the dance, and then take the dialogue. And both of them are forms of release, right?
Right.
So, you're just kicking up the endorphins, having the blood circulating and releasing the stress all at the same time. I love that. I'm a big proponent of habit stacking in order to like increase your wellness, right? So I love that you did that, because what were some of the things that came out of that from the women that, joined you there?
I think so we have, it was like it's a shared space, open space. And I think one of the things was having community
Mm-hmm.
in a time when we were like shut down. Like we really couldn't meet. We were actually on Zoom calls and dancing, looking at the camera and moving, like, imagine that. And so it was being able to have community. When we started it off, we invited people that we knew in to see if it was something that they were interested and needed. And what I loved about it is that we had an elder woman there, mama, like they say, a mother there in the space. And then most of us, we were in varying ages, but still, I think everybody felt good that we could talk about things that were impacted on our jobs that were similar. And at that time, I think a lot of us were experiencing like having those conversations at work, because we were, all this is going on in the country. So the D&I spaces were like, come on, we got to talk. Let's get the staff together. And we were all, I think, collectively, like, I'm tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
And so it gave us a place to be able to say that, without feeling judged, or somebody might not understand that. And it's, and that was for us. So I think it gave us a space and a community. And we did that we actually met for, I think it was like the first Saturday of the month for like, I think it was 6 months. We went into the summer, and it was nice. Yeah, it was nice.
Love that. I love that. And you just made me think about something else when you talk about like that was your space, and it just made me think of safe spaces, right? So talk about how important it is to have safe spaces, even when you're considering decluttering, right? Because if you don't come from a place where you feel safe, how hard is it for a person then to be able to declutter their life?
Yeah, a safe space is kind of critical, right? And it goes back to, that's a really good question. Not having a safe space is the cost of clutter, right? Not having a safe space is the cost. And that's why it's really important that we are regularly examining our spaces, what's going on for us. That is probably very critical, because that's really, I don't really touch on hoarding, right?
Mhm.
That's a whole nother type of depression, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but what I would like to call this work as preventative.
Mhm.
It's like, let's don't get there. But I will
Mhm.
say, at one of my book readings, I had a woman who bought my book approach me and said, I'm getting your book. She was inspired by the dialogue that we had.
Mhm.
I think this, she goes, I think I might be a hoarder, but I think this book is going to help me.
Mm.
And I said, well, I'm here to help. And she never reached back out, but
Yeah.
that in itself is powerful,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
'Cause even the
Um,
consideration,
yeah,
right? One, to identify it, that which is part of your 6 steps there, but for her to be able to identify it and just the consideration of, okay, I think that I'm in this space and I need to do something about it, right?
right,
Yeah.
right, right. And so, um, yeah, so that's really important. I think that is the cost of clutter. If we're not in a safe space, we
Yeah.
want to make sure that we are able to create an environment. And I talk about the home as a sanctuary. I talk about even your workspace has to align with what you need it to be,
Yeah.
and um, and not just your space, but what's going on at work is like how you're using your time
Mhm.
there, you know. Um,
And that could be a whole show, right? In terms of time,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And how you
yeah.
utilize that.
Yeah. I've done a corporate discussion on just time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, because I know, like, especially in this day and age too, because you were talking yesterday about this apparatus, right? You can see that.
Yes.
It's like how we
Oh,
use our time even around this thing here and being able to declutter it there. And like there's so many things that we could get into. I love what you're doing.
thank
And I
you.
love how you're doing it in terms of how you apply it and how you bring it all together, because the true decluttering happens full scope. And I love that you're considering it all when you help people to declutter their lives, so that it's not just the physical spaces that are around them. It is the energy, it is the mindset, it is the spirit. I love, 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 love what you're doing. We are unfortunately almost at the close of the show, and I wanted to give you an opportunity, one, to just give some closing remarks. And I also wanted to show your book, show the book cover and direct people there to get the book. So this, everyone, is what The Cost of Clutter, the book, looks like. I want you to go get your copy. I'm going to put up the site again, so you can get the book. It is thecostofclutter.com/the book. Make sure that you get your copy. Make sure that you now take into consideration, as we just talked about, how to declutter your life, your physical spaces, your mental spaces, your emotional spaces, your spiritual spaces. How do you declutter your life so that you can have more freedom and more peace? You heard Monica talking about freedom and peace, and it all starts with a vision. I also want to put this back up, and I'm going to, while I'm showing your 6 steps, I just want you to give your closing remarks.
Sure. Yeah. Moving from clutter to clarity, we have to start small.
Mhm.
We have to start small. There's no shame, there's no blame in how we, you know, move what our space looks like and what we are going through. And that is why we are here to help. And that is why this is about lifestyle. This isn't about I got to do the basement right now, but it might take a year to get the basement that way you want. It might take two, right? But the part is to start slow, and also vision is very important. Take the time and write out some things. When you're
Mhm.
thinking about a space, just sit down and write down like I like this, I don't like that. This is what I want. At the end of the day, we want how you live to be functional for you. And we want it to meet where you're at and also where you're going. So we have to have the ability to be able to have some things in place to do that. And I think that vision, the 6 steps can do that for you.
I love that. I
Thank you.
love that. Well, everybody, I'm sad that we have to go because there's so much more that we could cover. I mean, we could talk for hours about this, but I love how passionate you are about what you're doing. I am blessed that you came here to share everything that you're doing. And I love to see it because you are my sister. And I love to see everything that you are doing. And I know that, we've gone on a transformation journey. So I
Yes,
know that you've cleared clutter because we did that together in some
yes, we
spaces,
did.
right? So I
We did.
know what we went through to get to the place where we are now and continuing this process. So I love how you have decided to really put yourself out there and help people change their lives and really transform their lives. So we thank you everybody for joining us here this evening. It has been amazing. We want you to join us back here again next Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. right here on the Whole Living Show. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.